Some Answered Questions by Abdu'l Baha. Chapter 9, Part 1. Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah appeared at a time when the Persian Empire was immersed in profound obscurantism and ignorance, and lost in the blindest fanaticism. In the European histories, no doubt, you have read detailed accounts of the morals, customs, and ideas of the Persians during the last centuries. It is useless to repeat them. Briefly, we will say that Persia had fallen so low that to all foreign travellers it was a matter of regret that this country, which in former times had been so glorious and highly civilized, had now become so decayed, ruined, and upset, and that its population had lost its dignity. It was at this time that Baha'u'llah appeared. His father was one of the viziers, not one of the ulama. As all the people of Persia know, he had never studied in any school, nor had he associated with the ulama or the men of learning. The early part of his life was passed in the greatest happiness. His companions and associates were Persians of the highest rank, but not learned men. As soon as the Bab became manifested, Baha'u'llah said, "This great man is the Lord of the righteous, and faith in him is incumbent upon all." And he arose to assist the Bab, and gave many proofs and positive evidences of his truth, in spite of the fact that the ulama of the state religion had constrained the Persian government to oppose and resist him, and have further issued decrees ordering the massacre, pillage, persecution, and expulsion of his followers. In all the provinces, they began to kill, to burn, to pillage converts, and even to assault the women and children. Regardless of this, Baha'u'llah arose to proclaim the word of the Bab with the greatest firmness and energy. Not for one moment was he in concealment. He mixed openly with his enemies. He was occupied in showing forth evidences and proofs, and was recognized as the herald of the word of God. In many changes and chances, he endured the greatest misfortunes, and at every moment he ran the risk of being martyred. He was put into chains and confined in an underground prison. His vast property and inheritance were pillaged and confiscated. He was exiled 4 times from land to land, and found rest only in the greatest prison. Footnote: exiled first to Baghdad, then to Constantinople, then to Adrianople, Baha'u'llah was imprisoned in Akka, in Israel, in 1868. In spite of all this, he never ceased for one instant his proclamation of the greatness of the cause of God. He manifested such virtue, knowledge, and perfections that he became a wonder to all the people of Persia. So much so that in Tehran, Baghdad, Constantinople, Rumelia, and even in Akka, one of the learned and scientific men who entered his presence, whether friend or enemy, never failed to receive the most sufficient and convincing answer to whatever question was propounded. All frequently acknowledged that he was alone and unique in all perfections. It often happened that in Baghdad, certain Mohammedan ulama, Jewish rabbis, and Christians met together with some European scholars in a blessed reunion. Each one had some question to propose, and although they were possessed of varying degrees of culture, they each heard a sufficient and convincing reply, and retired satisfied. Even the Persian ulama, who were at Kabila and Najaf, chose a wise man whom they sent on a mission to him. His name was Mullah Hassan Amu. He came into the holy presence and proposed a number of questions on behalf of the ulama, to which Baha'u'llah replied. Then Hassan Amu said, "The ulama recognize without hesitation and confess the knowledge and virtue of Baha'u'llah, and they are unanimously convinced that in all learning he has no peer or equal. And it is also evident that he has never studied or acquired this learning. But still, the ulama say, we are not contented with this. We do not acknowledge the reality of his mission by virtue of his wisdom and righteousness. Therefore, we ask him to show us a miracle in order to satisfy and tranquilize our hearts." Baha'u'llah replied, "Although you have no right to ask this, for God should test his creatures, and they should not test God. Still, I allow and accept this request. But the cause of God is not a theatrical display, and that is presented every hour, of which some new diversion may be asked for every day. If it were thus, the cause of God would become mere child's play. The ulamas must, therefore, assemble and with one accord choose one miracle, and write that after the performance of this miracle they will no longer entertain doubt about me, and that all will acknowledge and confess the truth of my cause. Let them seal this paper and bring it to me. This must be the accepted criterion. If the miracle is performed, no doubt will remain for them, and if not, we shall be convicted of imposture." The learned man, Hassan Amu, rose and replied, "There is no more to be said." He then kissed the knee of the Blessed One, although he was not a believer, and went. He gathered the ulama and gave them the sacred message. They consulted together and said, "This man is an enchanter. Perhaps he will perform an enchantment, and then we shall have nothing more to say." Acting on this belief, they did not dare to push the matter further. This man, Hassan Amu, mentioned this fact at many meetings. After leaving Kabila, he went to Kermanshah and Tehran and spread a detailed account of it everywhere, laying emphasis on the fear and the withdrawal of the ulama. Briefly, all his adversaries in the Orient acknowledged his greatness, grandeur, knowledge, and virtue. And though they were his enemies, they always spoke of him as the renowned Baha'u'llah. At the time when this great light suddenly arose upon the horizon of Persia, all the people, the ministers, the ulama, and men of other classes rose against him, pursuing him with the greatest animosity, and proclaiming that this man wishes to suppress and destroy the religion, the law, the nation, and the empire. The same was said of Christ. But Baha'u'llah, alone and without support, resisted them all, without ever showing the least weakness. At last they said, "As long as this man is in Persia, there will be no peace and tranquility. We must banish him, so that Persia may return to a state of quietude." They proceeded to use violence towards him, to oblige him to ask for permission to leave Persia, thinking that by this means the light of his truth would be extinguished. But the result was quite the contrary. The cause became magnified, and its flame more intense. At first, it spread throughout Persia only, but the exile of Baha'u'llah caused the diffusion of the cause throughout other countries. Afterwards, his enemies said, "Iraqi Arab is not far enough from Persia. We must send him to a more distant kingdom." This is why the Persian government determined to send Baha'u'llah from Iraq to Constantinople. Again, the event proved that the cause was not in the least weakened. Once more they said, "Constantinople is a place of passage and of sojourn for various races and people. Among them are many Persians." For this reason, the Persians had him further exiled to Rumelia. But when there, the flame became more powerful and the cause more exalted. At last the Persians said, "Not one of these places is safe from his influence. We must send him to some place where he will be reduced to powerlessness, and where his family and followers will have to submit to the direst afflictions." So they chose the prison of Akka, which is reserved especially for murderers, thieves, and highway robbers. And in truth, they classed him with such people. But the power of God became manifested. His word was promulgated, and the greatness of Baha'u'llah then became evident. For it was from this prison, and under such humiliating circumstances, that he caused Persia to advance from one state into another. He overcame all his enemies and proved to them that they could not resist the cause. His holy teachings penetrated all regions, and his cause was established. Indeed, in all parts of Persia, his enemies arose against him with the greatest hatred, imprisoning, killing, and beating his converts, and burning and razing to the ground thousands of dwellings, striving by every means to exterminate and crush the cause. In spite of all this, from the prison of murderers, highway robbers, and thieves, it became exalted. His teachings were spread abroad, and his exhortations affected many of those who had been the most full of hatred, and made them firm believers. Even the Persian government itself became awakened and regretted that which had arisen through the fault of the ulama. To be continued.